Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Alberta Freemason podcast. I'm Preston Meyer, chaplain and past master of Acacia Lodge number 11 in Edmonton, and the editor of this production.
Well, I am Right Worshipful Brother Tobias Terrill. I'm a past DDGM of Chinook Arch District, and I'm involved in several concordant bodies on the York Rite side.
I am Most Worshipful Brother Chris Uchman, past Grand Master for the Grand Lodge of Alberta. I'm also the chairman of the Committee for Fraternal Relations for the Grand Lodge of Alberta.
And my name's Matt Christie. I'm current sitting junior warden, Highlands Unity 168 in Edmonton, Alberta, soon to be after a 2-year stay, moving to the senior warden chair here in November, the end of November. So I'm quite excited about that, and a member of a couple other concordant bodies as well. So thanks for having me.
And so we're talking about interjurisdictional visitation, a little bit of a sequel to our previous episode.
Preston, thank you for inviting me to be part of this podcast. I think visitation is one of the most important parts of Masonry for a multitude of reasons. And it's also one of the things that we, as Masons, should be really instilling in newer Masons very early on. One of the things I learned quite a while ago is, visitation, for one thing, can be very addictive. But it's also, I like to think of it that the rewards of Masonry are not earned or gathered within your own lodge. That's where we toil, that's where we do our labor, that's where we hone ourselves as better Masons. Where the true rewards and blessings of Masonry is outside of the lodge. It's by this blessing that we have of Masons, of being able to, within our own jurisdiction, go and travel and meet new Masons, new brothers. And there's always this instant connection that you'll get by going and visiting, because we're predisposed to connect. We have we've all gone through the same thing. We have a shared experience in life, and that's becoming a Mason. So you'll find that when you go visiting, especially that first time as a younger Mason, you may be nervous, but you just have to go and put yourself out there, and that's when the rewards of Masonry start coming to you. Where they really come, those ones you leave the jurisdiction. I remember the first time I went to a lodge outside of Alberta was in rural Georgia, of all places, LaGrange, Georgia. It's about 17 miles from the Alabama border in southern Georgia, right along the Chattahoochee River. So, and I remember contacting the secretary of the lodge and saying, I'd like to come visit. And this was in 2000, because I was junior warden of Patricia Lodge at that time. So I go down and he says, yeah, we'd love to have you. He says, I just want to let you know, we're just a good country lodge. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I know where you are, but thank you for letting me know. And he said this about 5 times, that just let you know we're a country lodge. So when I got there, I was dressed like full suit, tie, everything, and they were all in white t-shirts and jeans. And the secretary said to me, he says, I told you we were a country lodge. And to me, I looked and I said, well, where I'm from, a country lodge just means they have better food. Because that was what we used to go and travel out to these country lodges for the good food. But then he took me in to be investigated. And they started asking me questions that I had no clue what they were talking about. Now remember, my lodge is a Canadian Rite Lodge. Northern Lights District, which my lodge is in, are all Canadian Rite lodges. I had never been to a York Rite or, an ancient lodge. So some of these questions kind of threw me. And, I had memorized the, Tyler's Oath, and I had done all these different things that I was told to do. None of those things they asked me about. And this investigation went on about 15, 20 minutes. And I was sweating partially because it was hot and I was in a suit, but I was nervous. I was 30 years old at the time. I'd been a Mason 4 years, and I finally pushed myself out of that comfort zone. And I finally said to him, I said, are you going to let me in or not? Because I said, I promise you I am a Mason. And he said, oh, we knew right off the bat you were a Mason. He said, but you're the first visitor we've had in about 20 years. So they hadn't done an investigation either, like visitor from outside of their region. And so they finally let me in, and just the opening, of course, seeing it be done completely different than what I was used to. And then that whole evening was this experience that 24 years later, I still, when I talk about it, it puts me back there and I've got these happy feelings because of it. And that was the start of my real visitation and kind of that passion for it. But it's putting yourself out there.
You know what, Chris, that brings a really, really interesting perspective. And that is, we go to visit the lodge, we're challenging the lodge to investigate us and to go through that process. And it puts them in a new experience too.
And that's where visitation, like the blessings aren't just for you.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
most things in Masonry, it's not just about you, it's about the collective. And when they were just as excited to have me visit as I was to visit them. And it was this whole different experience too. And it started opening the window to the world of Masonry for me. And now, wherever I am, if I have an opportunity, I will try to do some sort of Masonic visiting, as long as it doesn't impose too much on my vacation and my wife's time. So she's pretty used to it.
Yeah. Well, I've in terms of interjurisdictional, I think I've gone to the extreme out of this group, and most in that I've attended lodge in Jerusalem. And that was, going over there with a group of Freemasons. That trip, of course, got all initiated because of Murray Pay, and just to go on that experience and visit some lodges over there, see the different structures of the lodge, meet some different members. That process for us was quite different. We had to have credentials supplied to the Grand Lodge of Alberta. There was a letter done up for each individual one of us. Those were sent over to every single lodge and the Grand Lodge for the Grand State of Israel ahead of time. The letters accompanied us as we went around, and so quite a bit different. So when we got there, there was no investigations whatsoever. It was, are you who you are? And yes, we are. Then great, welcome, come on in.
So that's an interesting point to it, because there is different types of Masonic visitation too. You went as a group.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more preparation, because it's not fair to the lodge for a group just to show up.
No, certainly not.
So
no.
Then there's also, so different Grand Lodges have different expectations as well. So if you're traveling to England, they love protocol, and especially depending on where you are Masonically. So what you've done within Masonry will affect sometimes what you need to do visiting. And I'll use myself as an example. Due to the office that I've obtained, and now I'm a past Grand Master, proper protocol is to inform the Grand Lodge if I'm going to be in the jurisdiction, because it's not asking for permission, it's being courteous. So when you went as a group, the letter to the Grand Lodge in Israel, it's a courtesy. It's to let them know this group of travelers are there, so that if they wish to do something, they're able to.
Right.
Once you're like a higher ranking, and I don't like even that term, because I still think brother's the most important rank, but when you get into protocol and proper ways of doing things, it's letting them know you're going to be there. Now, if you're going with a group, then you need to also let the lodge know. You need to let everybody know that you're coming, because they're going to be unprepared. And I'll give you a quick example. This is years ago, and I was the district deputy grand master, and I was going to the Philippines. So I had a letter sent just stating that I would be in the Philippines. Would it be possible to bring greetings on behalf of the Grand Lodge to the Grand Master? And here's the lodges that I would be visiting. And I put in there that I may visit other ones if the opportunity comes, but these are the ones I knew I was going to. So we got a response saying, thank you very much for the letter. Unfortunately, the Grand Master will be in Guam for a district meeting and would be unable to entertain me for a visitation. So I go to the Philippines. I'm up in the northern part of the Philippines, and I get picked up by some Masons there I'd never met before, but it was arranged through another Mason I knew. And we're driving around, and we get a phone call saying, the Grand Master's in town and my presence has been requested. So off we go to this guest house. So we go into this gated community, and we pull up to this house, and there's armed military guys all around the house. And I'm thinking, what the heck have I got myself into? Get out, and the head soldier walks straight up to me and says, welcome. The general's expecting you. He's upstairs. And up I go the stairs, and I go into this room, and there's the Grand Master, who is a retired four-star general. He's a former head of the Philippine Armed Forces and former Secretary of Defense. Had I not sent that letter, I never would have met him. But because I'd sent the courtesy, and he took it serious, he all of a sudden said, oh, look, I'm in the same town at the same time. So he summoned me. And again, it's one of those memories that I'll never forget. And when I see him now, we always talk about it. Because 6-7 years later, I still run into him at annual communications. But the important thing is for especially newer brothers, if you're going to be traveling outside of the jurisdiction, there's a couple things. First is you need to ensure that you've got a letter of good standing from your own lodge. That and your dues card. Okay, so those are the two most important things. Within North America, most of the time, that will suffice, but it's always good to get a letter from the Grand Lodge office as well. Now, it's called a letter of introduction. And all it's saying is, it's our Grand Lodge asking them to treat you as we would treat visitors from their Grand Lodge, is the idea. It's a courtesy. Within our constitution regulations, there's a portion that says that communication for the purpose of the business of Freemasonry must go Grand Secretary to Grand Secretary, interjurisdictionally. Now, the business of Freemasonry is talking about not about visitation. So to contact a lodge to find out when they meet, what their order of dress is, which the lesson I learned is always to ask, what's your order of dress? Don't ever assume, because if you show up in a tuxedo and they're wearing jeans, you feel a little out of place. To do all those things, that's completely permitted. And again, the Amity app, not that this is a advertising for it, that's one of the beautiful things with that is there's a lot of ways that you can actually contact lodges, get information on how to contact them through that app. If you're unable to, the Grand Lodge office can help to facilitate that. And the big one is just relax when you're in the investigation. A lot of the lodges that you're going to go visit, they want to make sure you're a legitimate Mason, especially if you're in Europe or Asia, places like that where there are a lot of clandestine Grand Lodges, or where Masonry carries a great deal of social privilege. They want to make sure that you're actually a Mason, and that's where the letters from Grand Lodge, the informing of Grand Lodge, but it's more about information now than permission. Most lodges, if you've got all your documents, most lodges will not turn you away if you can prove that you're a Mason. Now, they may say next time go through the proper protocol, but their Masonry is becoming more accessible and more visible than it used to be. And that was part of why they were so hung up on protocol years ago, was making sure that only the right people got to go visit, and they also just liked the pomp.
Yeah, and a visit to a lodge may also reduce down some of that protocol as well.
Yeah.
If you're going to be regularly coming back to a specific lodge, every couple of months or every year or something like that, they may say, you know what, don't worry about all that protocol. Just, you're good, we're good. Just contact the lodge and let us know that you're coming.
Yeah. Well, once you visited, you're no longer a stranger.
Yeah.
See, and that's the thing, is there'll be multiple people within that lodge that'll be able to vouch for you. So it's that, now you're communicating back and forth like family. Hence what I said earlier about, visitation is about finding your extended family all over the world. Don't let the protocol scare you away from visiting. If you're not sure, just ask different people. There's enough people that do visiting interjurisdictionally that'll be able to help. If you mess it up slightly, just apologize, because they're not going to disown you. They may just say, oh, you can't do it that way. But again, a brother's a brother.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is always confirm before you go visiting that the lodge you're about to visit has proper recognition from this grand jurisdiction. More importantly, so it's not an offense to inadvertently visit a lodge that we don't recognize or have recognition with. It is an offense to do it knowingly. And interjurisdictional doesn't mean you have to go across the globe to do it. Preston got to experience a great interjurisdictional visitation when he was the Grand Chaplain.
It wasn't complicated for me at all because I had you to back me up, Chris.
And where did you go, Preston?
We went to Lloydminster. We visited
Oh.
Britannia Lodge for one of their amalgamations.
With the Grand Master Saskatchewan was present, and myself, that was when I was Grand Master, and we had, there's a few guys came up from Calgary and from Edmonton, and it was this great experience.
And of course, we should mention too, one opportunity a year that every Mason in this tri-jurisdictional can have an opportunity to do a little bit of an interjurisdictional visit is the tri-jurisdictional, which happens in September of every year, and this year we'll be down in Montana. And there's a great opportunity for you to go and spend a weekend with members from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Montana, but also to have a contingent from Alberta. So you're visiting. It may be out edging on the outside of your comfort zone, but you've got some brothers from your jurisdiction to back you up, and so that might be a great way to ease into that interjurisdictional visitation.
That's normally the third weekend in September.
I joined Masonry when I was 22, curious about visitation, but was worried. And I appreciate what you said, scared of screwing up, scared of embarrassing my lodge, the Grand Lodge of Alberta, and others, and not representing well. And that then got imprinted, and you're like concerned, like, what if I got to do wrong, all this stuff. There's so much more I want to visit. I've been fortunate to travel the globe professionally and recreationally, and I've never visited outside of Alberta, and I just wish I had, because I've been fortunate to go to England, I've gone to Scotland, I've gone to Ireland, Australia, Mexico, Brazil, places like that, and I'm like, I just want to go visit, but I don't want to screw up.
As leaders within the craft,
yeah,
we need to do a better job educating brethren on how to properly visit. We really should have a little brochure that's available. So you're going to visit, here's what you need to do. And we also need to streamline the process within Grand Lodge of obtaining those letters of introduction, is having a better way of doing it so that it doesn't take forever. But it starts within your own lodge, is starting with your secretary getting that letter of good standing. There's a lot of misconceptions about the term, say, regular Grand Lodge or amity or regularity. These are all terms that are used.
Mhm.
You know, regularity is a statement saying that it's a regular Grand Lodge. It doesn't necessarily mean we have bilateral recognition of each other. So, you know, there's a commission on information with the Conference of Grand Masters, and it was formed like 1952. And it was to start going through that. How do we determine whether a Grand Lodge is regular or not? First part is it regular? So that means, does it have supremacy of origin? So for example, you need to have three lodges to create a Grand Lodge. Those have to be regular, proper Masonic lodges. They get together and say, we're going to form a Grand Lodge. And then they have to have the territory. So supremacy over the territory.
With no
Exclusivity.
with no other competing
Yeah.
Grand Lodge.
So exclusivity or a treaty of mutual territory. So I'll use the Grand Lodge of Alberta as an example. When we were formed, there was 17 lodges and one lodge that was under dispensation when they first started talking about. Now, before the consecration of our Grand Lodge, that 18th lodge had been consecrated. So we were formed with 18 lodges that were part of the Grand Lodge of Manitoba. So we had to sent a letter to the Grand Lodge of Manitoba. And at the same time, we'd actually sent a letter to British Columbia too, saying, hey, will you consecrate us as a Grand Lodge? But ultimately, by going to Manitoba, who our lodges were under, there we have that great sense of that origin story, because we were consecrated by the Grand Lodge that was ceding the territory to us. Do they have the proper origin? The three regular lodges that were properly consecrated lodges, and do they have control or supremacy over their own territorial area, or a treaty of mutual territory? And you'll see that down in Mexico, where there's a bunch of treaties of mutual territory between the York Grand Lodge, which is a national Grand Lodge, and the 31 regular state Grand Lodges. And they form the Confederation of Regular State Grand Lodges of Mexico. And it took them, almost 100 years to get all of them to have treaties with the York Grand Lodge. And now they do. Right now, there's probably 11 or 12 jurisdictions that I'm in the process of reviewing.
Okay.
For recognition, that they've requested recognition, and I'm reviewing. And it's not a slam dunk. There's times where we just don't have enough information yet, or I really rely on the reports from the commission too, which I've been lucky. I've been to 2 of their meetings now, and I'll be again going this year, because they're very informative. You get to hear because some of these Grand Lodges, they come and actually present their case to this commission, because if the commission says, no, you're not, now again, it's just saying they're regular. It doesn't say that they just meet the standards of regularity. It doesn't necessarily mean, hey, all 65 or 66 now member bodies for the Conference of Grand Masters need to immediately recognize them, just that, yes, they meet those standards.
Right.
And by the way, the final standard of the 3 that we talked about earlier, so it's the origin, the supremacy of territory or mutual treaty, and then the third one is that the volume of the sacred law, or the 3 great lights, must be considered furniture of the lodge. And that's an important one for our type of masonry. because we believe that, the great architect of the universe is important. Whereas, you get some of the continental masonry where that's not a requirement.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that in our jurisdiction we have amity, recognition, good for communication, with 170 Grand Lodges. A lot of traveling that we can be doing. And if we're going to collect our Masonic wages, we got to travel in distant lands and do the work.
Exactly. It's part of what we're supposed to be doing as Masons. And again, you get what you put into it. And the more you put in, the more rewarding this fraternity is. And one of the things is, again, not to preach, but we always got to remember, we are a fraternity, first and foremost. So we should be doing fraternal things, not just business stuff, not just this is that fraternal side of Masonry, so important. And that's going and meeting other Masons and gaining those experiences. That's what makes us better men, is experiencing other people. It's not sitting in our basements doing whatever kids do in their basements nowadays. But you just think back to the pandemic, how lucky we were to have Masonry, because even though it was virtually like this, I got to meet so many people from around North America and around the world, because we all decided we were not going to disconnect. We decided we were going to continue to stay connected as brethren. And if anything, we became more connected in a lot of ways.
Yeah, wish I had visited more would be the one piece advice I would give to any brother or prospective brothers on this. Get out, visit. You will be greeted warmly, and it is what it's about. I will always be grateful for the fraternal welcomings that I've always had.
Go outside of your lodge, collect your reward.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're only going to lodge once a month, you're really missing out. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Alberta Freemason podcast, with voices from across Alberta and music from our Grand Organist, Very Worshipful Brother Lardeon Ranon. Happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again.